Individual freedom and social constraint, a sociological and philosophical inquiry. Modern societies often celebrate individual freedom as one of their highest values. People are encouraged to be themselves, pursue personal goals, and express unique identities. Yet at the same time, individuals are embedded in complex social structures that shape behavior, beliefs, and opportunities. This tension between personal freedom and social constraint has long occupied both psychologists, sociologists, and philosophers. Understanding it is essential for grasping how individuals function within society and how societies maintain order. From a sociological perspective, human behavior is never purely individual. Emil Durkheim, one of the founders of sociology, argued that society exerts a coercive force over individuals through what he called social facts. These include norms, values, laws, and institutions that exist independently of any single person. Language, for example, is not chosen freely by individuals. It is inherited and learned through social interaction. Even when people believe they are acting autonomously, their choices are often shaped by expectations embedded in their social environment. Philosophers, however, have traditionally focused on the concept of free will. Thinkers such as Immanuel Kant emphasized moral autonomy, the idea that individuals are capable of rational self-governance. According to this view, freedom does not mean acting without constraints, but acting according to principles one has rationally chosen. This philosophical notion of freedom is internal rather than external. It concerns intention and responsibility rather than social structure. The contrast between these perspectives raises a central questions. To what extent are individuals truly free? Sociology suggests that freedom is limited by class, gender, culture, and historical context, while philosophy insists that moral responsibility presupposes freedom. Rather than viewing these positions as contradictory, contemporary thinkers increasingly treat them as complementary. Socialization and the formation of the self. One key concept linking sociology and philosophy is socialization, the process through which individuals internalize social norms and values. From early childhood, people learn what is acceptable, desirable, and forbidden. Families, school, peer groups, and media all contribute to shaping identity. As a result, the self is not a purely private or natural entity, but a social product. The sociologist George Herbert Mead argued that the self emerges through interaction with others. According to Mead, individuals learn to see themselves from the perspective of society, a process he described as taking the role of the generalized other. This ability enables cooperation and social order, but it also limits spontaneity. People regulate their behavior based on anticipated reactions from others, often unconsciously. Philosophically, this raises concerns about authenticity. If the self is socially constructed, can individuals ever act authentically? Existentialist philosophers such as Jean-Paul Sartre confronted this issue directly. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that although individuals are shaped by circumstance, they are always responsible for how they respond to them. Even choosing not to choose, he claimed, is itself a choice. In this sense, social constraints do not eliminate freedom. They merely define the context in which freedom is exercised. Power, norm, and invisible control. Not all social constraints are explicit. Many operate subtly through norms rather than laws. The philosopher Michel Foucault explored how power functions not only through institutions like prisons or governments, but also through everyday practices and knowledge systems. According to Foucault, modern societies discipline individuals by encouraging self-surveillance. People monitor their own behavior to conform to social expectations, reducing the need for external enforcement. This idea has significant implications for understanding freedom. When individuals internalize norms, control becomes invisible. People believe they are acting freely, while in reality they are reproducing socially approved behaviors. For example, standards of productivity, beauty, or success may appear natural, yet they are historically and culturally specific. From a sociological standpoint, this insight explains why social change is difficult. Individuals who deviate from norms often face social sanctions ranging from subtle disapproval to exclusion. As a result, conformity persists even in societies that emphasize individualism. Philosophically, this challenges simplistic notions of freedom by revealing how deeply power penetrates everyday life. Agency within structure. Despite these constraints, individuals are not merely passive products of life, of society. Sociology Anthony Giddens proposed the theory of structuration, which emphasizes the dual relationship between agency and structure. Social structures shape individual actions, but they are also reproduced or transformed through those actions. In other words, society exists because people continuously enact it. This perspective restores a degree of agency without denying structural influence. Individuals may not choose the conditions of their lives, but they can interpret, resist, or modify them. Small actions, when repeated collectively, can lead to significant social change. Historical movements for civil rights, gender equality, and labor reform demonstrate how constrained individuals can nonetheless reshape social norms. Philosophically, this aligns with pragmatic views of freedom. Rather than treating freedom as an absolute condition, pragmatists define it in terms of capacity, the ability to act meaningfully within given circumstance. Freedom, in this sense, is gradual and relational rather than total. Modern individualism and its limits. Contemporary societies often promote a strong ideology of individual responsibility. Success and failure are frequently attributed to personal efforts, while structural factors are minimized. From a sociological perspective, this emphasis can obscure inequality. Access to education, economic resources, and social networks significantly affects life outcomes. Yet individuals are often blamed for circumstances beyond their control. This tension has philosophical consequences when freedom is overstated. Moral judgment becomes harsher. People are praised or condemned without adequate consideration of structural constraints. Conversely, when social determination is overstated, individuals may feel powerless and disengaged. A balanced understanding recognizes that individuals are neither fully autonomous nor entirely determined. Freedom exists within limits, and responsibility must be contextualized. This nuanced view encourages empathy without denying accountability. Conclusion: the relationship between individual freedom and social constraint lies at the heart of both sociology and philosophy. Sociology reveals how deeply social structures shape behavior, while philosophy insists on the importance of agency and responsibility. Together, they offer a more comprehensive understanding of human action. Rather than asking whether individuals are free or constrained, a more productive question is how freedom operates within constraint. By acknowledging both structure and agency, individuals can better understand their position in society and act with greater awareness. True freedom in this sense is not the absence of influence, but the capacity to reflect on it and respond deliberately. Mm. Essay question 1. Discuss how sociology and philosophy differ in their approaches to individual freedom. How can these perspectives be reconciled? Model answer. Sociology and philosophy approach the concept of individual freedom from distinct but contemporary angles. Sociology emphasizes the extent to which human behavior is shaped by social structures, while philosophy focused on moral agency, and free will. Although these approaches may appear contradictory, they can be reconciled through a more nuanced understanding of freedom. From a sociological perspective, individual freedom is constrained by social facts such as norms, individuals, and cultural expectation. Thinkers like Emily Durkheim argue that these factors exist independently of individuals and exert coercive power over them. As a result, personal choices are often shaped by factors such as class, gender, and historical context rather than purely individual intention. Philosophy, on the other hand, traditionally insists that freedom is a prerequisite for moral responsibility. Immanuel Kant, for example, viewed freedom as a rational self-governance, the capacity to act accordingly to principles one has chosen through reason. This philosophical concept of freedom does not deny external constraint but locates freedom in internal decision making. These perspectives can be reconciled by recognizing that freedom operates within limits. While social structures shape the range of possible actions, individuals retain agency in how they interpret and respond to these constraints. Freedom, therefore, is not absolute independence but reflective action within a structured social context. Explain the difference between tense and aspect in English verb system. Why is this distinction important? Moral answer. Tense and aspect are two fundamental but distinct components of the English verb system. Tense refers to the grammatical expression of time, indicating when an event occurs relative to the moment of speaking. In English, tense is primarily expressed morphologically through verb forms, most notably the present and past tense. For example, walks contrast with walked to signal temporal temporal reference. Aspect by contrast does not locate an event in time but describes how the speaker views the internal temporal structure of that event. It concerns whether an action is ongoing, complete, repeated, or temporary. Ongoing, complete, repeated, or temporary. English mainly employs two grammatical aspects, the progressive aspect, PING, and the perfect aspect, have past participle, have plus past participle. Have plus past participle. This distinction is important because tense alone cannot capture how an event unfolds. For example, the sentence "she lived in Paris" and "she was living in Paris" both refer to the past, yet they convey different interpretations. The former suggests a complete state, while the latter emphasizes duration or temporariness. Understanding the tense aspect distinction allows for more precise interpretation of meaning and explains why verbs with the same tense can convey different temporal nuances. Tense locates an event in time relative to the moment of speaking. Present tense, past tense, walks, work, worked. Future time is not a true tense in English because it is expressed through modal verb will. Modal verb. Pre-parestic constructions be going to or context rather than inflection. She works at a hospital. Present time reference. She worked at a hospital. Past time reference. She will work at a hospital. Modal expression of futurity. What is aspect? Aspect describes how an event unfolds over time, rather than when it occurs. Aspect focuses on the internal temporal structure of a situation, whether it is ongoing, completed, repeated, temporary, or relevant to another time. English has two grammatical aspects: progressive aspect, perfect aspect. The progressive aspect presents an event as ongoing, incomplete, or temporary at a given reference time. Ongoing, incomplete, or temporary. Ongoing action. She is studying linguistics. He's living in Busan. Temporary situation. Background action. She was reading when the phone rang. Repeated behavior with attitude. He is always complaining. The progressive emphasis process, not completion. Stative verb and the progressive. Stative verb know, believe, own, like usually resist the progressive because they describe stable states. Um, However, they can appear in the progressive when reinterpreted dynamically. I'm loving this class. Temporary emotional reaction. She is thinking about the problem. Active mental process. Past perfect aspect. The perfect aspect expresses a connection between a past event and a later reference point, often the present. It does not simply mean past. I have lost my wallet. Past event with present result. I have lived here for 10 years. Past continuity. Past present 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 continuity. They have just arrived. Recent past relevance. Result. He has broken his leg. The leg is still broken. Experience. I have visited Japan. Continuation. She has worked here since 2020. License. What is the license? License. They have just finished. Time, expectations, and economic behavior. Economic activity unfolds over time. Decisions made in the present are shaped by memories of the past and expectations about the future. Yet time in economics is not merely chronological. It is conceptual. How individuals, firms, and governments interpret time determines how they invest, consume, save, and respond to uncertainty. Understanding the role of time in economic behavior is therefore essential for analyzing both microeconomic decisions and macroeconomic outcomes. At the individual level, economic choice often involves trade-offs between present and future benefits. Consumers decide whether to spend money now or save it for later, while workers consider whether to accept immediate income or invest time in education to increase future earnings. These choices reveal preference about time, commonly referred to as a time preference. Classical economic models assume that individuals discount future utility in a stable and rational manner. However, empirical evidence suggests that real decision makers often behave differently. Time preference and intertemporal choices. Intertemporal. Intertemporal 측두관골 선택. Intertemporal choice refers to decisions involving costs and benefits occurring at different points in time. Standard economic theory models such as decisions using exponential discounting, which assumes that individuals apply a constant discount rate to future outcomes. Under this assumption, preferences remain consistent over time. A person who prefers receiving a smaller reward today rather than a larger reward tomorrow should also prefer a smaller reward in a year rather than a large reward in 1 year and 1 day. In practice, however, human behavior frequently violates this assumption. Behavioral economists have documented widespread use of hyperbolic discounting, in which individuals place disproportionately high value on immediate rewards. This tendency explains why people often procrastinate under save for retirement or overconsume in the present despite recognizing long-term costs. Time in this sense is not perceived linearly but emotionally. These findings challenge the notion of a perfect relational economic agent. Instead, they suggest that economic behavior is deeply influenced by psychological factors including impatience, uncertainty, and limited self-control. Time becomes not only a parameter in economic models, but also a cognitive variable that shapes preferences. Expectations and economic dynamics. Expectations about the future play a central role in economic outcomes. Investment decisions, inflation, and financial markets are all depend on how economic actors anticipate future conditions. John Maynard Keynes famously emphasized the role of expectations and uncertainty, arguing that economic decisions are often driven by animal spirit rather than precise calculations. Modern macroeconomics formalizes expectations through the concept of relation expectations, which assumes that individuals use all available information efficiently when predicting the future. While this framework provides analytical clarity, it may overestimate the accuracy and stability of human forecasting. Economic agents frequently rely on heuristics, narratives, and past experience, leading to systematic errors. For example, during economic booms, optimism may lead to excessive borrowing and asset bubbles, while during recessions, the pessimism can suppress investment even when object indicators improve. Expectations, therefore, can become self-fulfilling when enough individuals believe that economic conditions will deteriorate. Their cautious behavior can contribute to an actual downturn. Expectations, therefore, can become self-fulfilling when enough individuals believe the economic conditions will deteriorate. Their cautious behavior can contribute to an actual downturn. Self-fulfilling. Time and uncertainty in financial markets. Financial markets provide a clear illustration of how time and expectations interact. Asset prices reflect not only current fundamentals but also beliefs about future returns. Investors constantly interpret signals about interest rates, technological change, and geopolitical risk, all of which unfold over time. The efficient market hypothesis suggests that prices fully reflect all available information. However, respond episodes of volatility and crisis suggest that markets are influenced by collective psychology. Short-term horizons, performance pressure, and hoarding behavior often dominate long-term analysis. As a result, market participants may overreact to recent events while underestimating long-term trends. Time horizons will time horizon. Time horizons will time horizons also differ across actors. Long-term institutional investors may focus on fundamentals and gradual growth, while short-term traders prioritize immediate price movements. These differing temporal perspectives can create tension and instability, particularly when short-term incentives outweigh long-term sustainability.